off to their wonderful, wonderful lesson. Okay, so good morning, everyone. Again, I'm still learning that new order of service. You know, we're in the forgiveness business here, so it's you can make all the mistakes you want. A friend of mine shared that she had started a new diet, and she altered her drive to work to avoid driving past her favorite bakery. But she said she accidentally drove by it one morning and she saw all these wonderful goodies in the window, and so she thought it was no accident. And she prayed, so God, it's up to you. You know, if you want me to have those delicious goodies, then create a parking place right in front of the bakery. And she says, sure enough, on her 8th time around the block, there it was. There it was. I've done that. Okay, God, show me. And then that's kind of our lesson today. Keep at it until you see results. Our lesson today is from 2 Chronicles, King Jehoshaphat. No more freak out fear for your life, right? We're going to look at how to deal with fear. Suppose you're facing an overwhelming situation that you want to stop or you want to change. You want to stop it if it's happening, or change if you can before it happens. How many of you have those kinds of experiences in your life, right? I have a friend in Nashville who, when I lived in Nashville, she was in the ministry, and she has a really well-developed consciousness of faith, a really strong faith. And she was visiting her mother in Puerto Rico when a really bad flood hit Nashville. And it was in the area where her home was. And so I called a couple of friends and that lived there, and they said their properties were 10 feet underwater. And so I thought Miriam's condo was among those in that area that was probably flooded. So I called her in Puerto Rico because I didn't want her the connections over there are not always good. This is years ago. And I called her because I didn't want her to come home and be surprised. I wanted to give her fair warning. And so I said, you need to be prepared. And her response was, no way. I know my property is God's property. The only thought about my property is that it's God's property and it's protected and preserved. And that was what she immediately started working with. She was still in Puerto Rico for a couple of more days, and I said, well, I'll pray with you. Little Miss Negative Minister, judging. She said, oh yeah, I'll pray with you, but you can't see this. If any of you have seen the effects of a natural disaster, it's impossible to describe, isn't it? I mean, it's impossible. But eventually I was able to get into the area that had flooded, and it was a total disaster zone. They had semi-trucks hauling away all the destroyed possessions to this. They created this field next to the railroad tracks, and the semis would haul all the former possessions of people and dump it in this field that was like several city blocks next to the railroad tracks, and then the bulldozers would load it into the railroad cars to haul it away. And it was several city blocks piled several stories high. It was unbelievable, the destruction. So I made my way to Miriam's property, and I found that in that whole section, it was condominium development with hundreds of, how they stretch those out with hundreds of properties. And in that entire section, there was only one row of about 8 homes that didn't flood. And Miriam's was one of them. And there was water lapping up on the street and lapping up on the sidewalks and lapping up near her front door, but the water never entered her property. No way. I know my property is God's property. The only thought about my property is that it's God's property and it's protected and preserved. That's a good word right now for our Northern California area that's, where we're dealing with fires and things. We have to surround the Spirit of God with our properties with the Spirit of God as protection and preservation. We're continuing in our series, A New Thought About the Old Guys in the Old Testament, right? And we're looking at not all, but some of the characters in the Old Testament and what spiritually, metaphysically they represent in consciousness. What foundational belief did they give us that helps us live more successful, more happy and joyous and thriving lives? And so today we're going to meet King Jehoshaphat and learn his method for overcoming overwhelm or impending danger and fear. His story is found in 2 Chronicles, starting in chapter 20, verses 10 through 30, and I've excerpted it in my own large font so that I can read it easily. But let me just give this really long. It's 30 verses, but I've just excerpted some of this so we get the idea of the story. It was when the Moabites and the Amorites, and I like to think the termites, gathered against King Jehoshaphat, messengers came and told him that a great multitude is coming against you. Now, whenever there's an enemy, when there's a king, the king metaphysically always represents our human intellect, that which guides us and leads us and rules us. And anything outside of us, people, I call them your thought people, they're thoughts. And so an invasion of negative thoughts was coming toward the king's mind, worry about something, fear about something. A great multitude is coming against you. And Jehoshaphat was afraid, and so he set himself to ask God, and the first thing he did then was he proclaimed a fast throughout the land. And then he stood in the assembly of people, and he declared, in your hand are power and might, that no one is able to withstand. We are powerless against the great multitude that's coming against us. We do not know what to do, but our eyes are on you. Our eyes are on you. So he declares this fast, and then he declares this word. He looks to God and says, all power and strength are with God. Then it says, the Spirit of the Lord came upon the assembly, saying, a really famous line that you want to kind of memorize and work with in your life when you're facing overwhelming conditions. Verse 15, do not fear or be dismayed at this great multitude, for the battle is not yours, but God's. Tomorrow go down against them, and you will find them in the valley. This battle is not for you to fight. Take your position, stand still, and see the victory of the Lord on your behalf. Now, as we've looked at the Old Testament characters, we looked at Moses standing at the impassable Red Sea, and his word was, fear not, stand still, and see the salvation of Jehovah, which he will work for you this day. We keep getting this repeating theme of drop the fear, stand in your faith, and rely on the power of Spirit within you, within the world. We call it the universal God consciousness, the universal energy. This battle is not for you to fight. Take your position, stand still, and see the victory of the Lord on your behalf. So it says they rose early in the morning. I'm skipping a lot of lines you can read it if you want to. They rose early in the morning and went out into the wilderness, and as they went out, Jehoshaphat stood and said, listen to me, all of Judah. Believe in the Lord your God, and you will be established. And he appointed singers to go before them, singing praise and thanksgiving to God. And then that led them to a watchtower in the wilderness, and they looked out on the multitude and found that during the night the armies had turned against each other and killed each other. So that there were only corpses lying on the ground, and no one had escaped. All the enemies were dead. And the only thing left for them to do was go down and take all the booty. They use the word booty in the Bible. Take all the booty. And it said there was so much, it took them 3 days to carry it all back to Jerusalem. And then all the people of Judah with the king returned to Jerusalem with joy, for the Lord had enabled them to rejoice over their enemies. So we want to look at this story spiritually. I've picked out a couple of things for us to look at. Do not fear or be dismayed at this great multitude, for the battle is not yours, but God's. All through the Bible, we're told not to be afraid when we're facing something horrific, some terrible condition. And fear is one of our most destructive inner enemies, isn't it? It makes you tremble in the night. It makes you lose sleep. It has all kinds of potential to disrupt your life. Fear is actually faith in reverse, right? It's faith in activated toward the worst thing that could happen. It's your belief activated toward worry. It's your belief activated toward, right? Many of us have been studying spiritual truth, unity principles long enough. I think that our lives are fairly well balanced, and it's maybe only occasionally that some big deal comes for you to face. And I think we live balanced enough that we don't live so much in what I call freak out fear, right? We don't have so many. When you stay aligned with the truth of your being, You know your inner spirit and the greatness of God in you, through you, as you. You don't have as many challenges. But every once in a while, an army of negatives can show up in your life, right? And you find yourself battling maybe depression, battling cancer, battling addiction, battling floods or fires like we have here in Northern California. And it said that King Jehoshaphat was confronted with a crisis that threatened to overwhelm him. The coalition of powerful armies was invading. And so that's a large army of fear-based thoughts. That's an enormous multitude of thoughts. And I'm sure when the king learned that all these armies were coming against him, I can imagine he had a lot of thoughts about what can I possibly do, what will happen to my people, what will happen to my kingdom, how will I meet this. I imagine when an army of negativity comes toward you and you want to try to stop it, prevent it, or derail it, you have thoughts like, what if this gets worse? Where will I get the money? What if it's cancer? How can I stop this? So all of that flood of thoughts, that army of thoughts, begins to attack you. And this is where we've got to shore up our faith and strengthen our spirits. In these circumstances, we want to stop being afraid, and take up fearlessness. Fearlessness about what's happening or might happen in the midst of the experience. Not after it's all over with and it worked out and we can look back and say, oh, glad that worked out. The way you change and create effective change is in the midst of the experience. You have to stand in the truth of spiritual truth of what you know. Martha Smock, who was the director of Silent Unity, our worldwide prayer ministry, in her book, Halfway Up the Mountain, I guess we're all just halfway up the mountain. I don't know why she called it that title, but being the director of prayer for 50 years, she has a couple of passages I want to share with you today. This is, be not dismayed. Be not dismayed. Do not let fear disable you or depress you. That's sometimes easier said than done, isn't it? God is with you. His power is present in you. His love surrounds you. His presence watches over you. Be not dismayed by sickness or ill health. Be not dismayed by what seems to be. Do not believe that anything is impossible or incurable with God. Dorothy Pearson, my minister, always used to say incurable just means it's inner curable. Well, probably the external circumstances and treatments and medications and stuff may not be effective, but the inner spirit of you can work in cooperation with God and bring healing. Be not dismayed by what seems to be. Do not believe that anything is impossible or incurable with God. Set your faith to work. Bring life and power to your prayers. When you are in need, then more than ever you are called on to stir up your faith in God, to meet the situations you face with courage, with imagination, with daring, and to see the good that is before you if you'll open your eyes to see it. And isn't that looking into the condition, looking into the situation, and seeing with spiritual eyes the reality and the truth of God? In the outer external human world, there's a bunch of stuff going on. But in the spiritual realm, there's wholeness, as we affirmed in our daily word. There's wholeness, there's life. And we want to begin to anchor ourselves in that truth. So today I want to share with you a formula for fearlessness that Jehoshaphat, I keep wanting to call him Jehovah, that Jehoshaphat demonstrated or followed. So a couple of steps. Step one is he proclaimed a fast from fear. What does that mean? What does that mean? It means that the ruling king, your human intellect, needs to set aside for a little while all your anxiety and fear about this and let yourself begin to move into a state of peace. He commanded all of Judah, so that means the king himself, the human intellect, the city of Judah, which means your physical body, and all the inhabitants, your thought people. So spirit, mind, and body. I think I have that in a slide, Jesse. Spirit, he commanded spirit, mind, and body, to set aside the fear, to fast from fear. And then he did something, back up to 2. He declared the truth, to know the truth, the spiritual truth about the situation, that there is only wholeness, there is only love, there is only life, there is only power, there is only strength, there is only wisdom in you, through you, as you, right? And he said, in your hand are power and might, so that no one is able to stand against you. And again, in know the truth, and again, in Martha Smock's work, she says, she has a Know the Truth chapter. Know the truth about it. Know the truth. Whatever your needs, whatever your longings, whatever your desires, as you know the truth, the good will seek to come toward you. If you need guidance and understanding about some matter, before you take any outer action, get still and know the truth. And I say the spiritual truth. What is the spiritual truth? The truth is that God is with you as perfect light. This light shines into your mind, quickening and illumining you. You are one with the mind of God, and all the wisdom and intelligence you need are already yours. Knowing truth, you are fortified and strengthened as you meet and handle your life and the affairs of your life. So know the truth. It was Charles Hannell, who's up there in his book, I have it here somewhere, wait a minute. Master Key System. He shared, to know the truth is the Aladdin's lamp that is imperative to change any condition. To know the truth is to not live in denial about something. And he also said it's not strenuous, forced effort. Joyfully, what's the best outcome you can take hold of in your mind? To know the truth is not a denial, not a strenuous, forced effort, but a deliberate concentration on the divine to the exclusion of any outside influences, to the exclusion of what's going on out there. We say in unity, we don't judge by appearances, but we judge righteous judgment. And righteous is defined as right use of spiritual law. We don't judge by appearances, but we begin to call the situation good by spiritual truth. He goes on to say, you are one with the mind of God, and in quiet prayer you bring the greatness of your spirit into touch with the so-called lesser things of life. And then you find that bringing your mind into harmony with the light of infinite wisdom, with the light of infinite love, it will sweep out every kind of doubt, fear, mistake, or regret. Because when truth appears, every form of negativity must disappear. So do not fear or be dismayed by this great multitude. The battle is not yours, but God's. This battle is not for you to fight. It's for you to take your position in faith, stand still, and see the victory of the Lord on your behalf. There are just some things in life that the human self of us can't do. And we have to call forth a miracle, but there's something in us but not of us that's greater than us, that has the power to transform our life and circumstances. And it's that step 3, which is total engagement. Total engagement. The Spirit of the Lord spoke and said, listen, all Judah, inhabitants of Jerusalem, listen, King, listen, all of you. Your whole mind and body and emotions has to be moving toward this outcome, this positive result, this outcome. Listen with your mind, your body, and your emotions, and then follow what you hear. So you get still and you listen for guidance. You listen for wisdom. Jehoshaphat gave up any attempt to try to do it by himself, to try to do it with just human intellect and brute strength. There are just some things that you have to move into a higher dimension, a higher life. The universal mind of Christ is constantly whispering to us to lean in for help, but sometimes we don't stand still long enough to hear it, and then when we hear it, we don't follow it. Typical example of this, when I lived in Nashville, I ordered these special products from this holistic internist. But I had to drive, he was out of network, and I had to drive to his office. And his office was about 8 miles away in the downtown area where parking was horrendous. And there was this one little empty field near him, and I parked there one time, and they threatened, I got there when the tow truck was putting the hook on my car, and I talked him out of towing my car. So it was just a nightmare to go down there. Well, I'm not affirming that. It was interesting parking to go there. It was about 8 miles away. So I was going to go there one day, and the little voice inside my head said, call the office. And I thought, no, I can circle the block 5 or 6 times and find a parking space. Or, I rationalized, I could just park farther away and get in my 10,000 steps and enjoy the morning. It was a beautiful morning. And then more deliberately, the voice that I've come to know how Spirit speaks in me said, call the office, Cherie, be kind to yourself. And I thought, well, okay, I'll call them because I can tell them what I'm coming to pick up, and they can listen to this. They can get the order ready ahead of time, and then I can just get in and get out faster and yada, yada, yada. So I called the office, and they'd moved. They moved their location one major street over from me, 3/4 of a mile down the road, and the receptionist says, oh, by the way, we have a parking garage now. We're happy to validate your parking. So it's so simple, the ways we can, what I call our ego, edging God out. We can edge God out when we don't stand still long enough and listen. Jehoshaphat says, put down your will and your way and all the ways you think you get it right and all the ways you think you're so absolutely sure of what's happening, and receive the help of Spirit. Don't miss the chance to get your mind aligned with Spirit, to listen to that intuition and that all-knowing presence within you, and be helped to get yourself out of the struggle, even if it's something as simple as parking. You listen, I'm not talking about spending hours in prayer every day, although that's great for your health and your life, but in the simple things of life, like call the office before you go, just and it said, be kind to yourself. I was going to overpower what my intuition was saying, what Spirit in me was saying, and do it the hard way. I was going to drive down there and find that they had moved, right, and then call and find out where they are, and then I'd be end up driving back home because they were just literally less than 1 mile from my house. And I just got an email this week, they're moving again. So it's been a few years. I was tempted to blow off the advice, rationalize something different, but the voice in me kept insisting, call the office. I think when we get still, when we let go of the fear and we stand still in these difficult experiences, we can hear how Spirit speaks in us. And in the little experience, like call the office, do this, do that, if we follow that voice, that knowing, if we follow that in the little experiences, over time, like my friend Miriam in Nashville with the flood, it builds into this great faith that she can just speak the word and get results. You're proving the Spirit of God in your life in the little things, and then it goes into the big things. Edging God out. We refuse to put down our will, our way, all that we're so sure of in order to receive help from God. We insist on doing it all ourselves. And time and again, we are offered a chance to link with the divine so we can let go of the struggle. The fourth step was when the king went out to meet the enemy, he commanded the singers to go before him with praise and thanksgiving. And this is where you want to begin to train your mind to think from love, to think from joy, to think a perpetual stream of goodness. The king used singers for affirmations, praise, and thanksgiving to build up his consciousness so that he lived from a higher level of living. What's that song by Garth Brooks? Friends in low places. You want to stop living in those low places and get yourself by being positive. I love my life. I love this. Favor and fortune follow me everywhere. I'm so grateful that I'm healthy. I'm so grateful I have love in my life. I'm so grateful I have friends. That's a perpetual stream of presiding good in your life. And you want to train your mind to build that strength up in your consciousness so when you face difficult experiences, you're already shored up in a more positive attitude, in a more positive outlook. The king, says all of that declaration brought them to a watchtower which is a high place in consciousness. You can't be down mouth about stuff and in a bad place if you're saying, I love my life. Things just work out for me. Money falls on me from out of the sky. Favor and fortune follow me everywhere. I love where I live. I love the people I go with. I love, just to have that presiding stream of good. Jesse, that's a slide. When you do that, when you don't give way to fear, when you don't let the ego convince you that there's nowhere you can turn for help, when you pray your way out of your difficulties, you go up. You rise up in consciousness. You rise up in the very essence of who you are. You rise to a new level of awareness of God's power and presence within you. And then they went out to the valley and up into the watchtower and looked out at the external circumstances, and they'd all been destroyed. All of the enemies turned against themselves, and all of the invading soldiers, all of those negative that slew of negative thoughts, and oh my God, and ain't it awful, and how will this work out, and what will I do, and nothing ever goes right for me. All of that can't touch you when you live from this universal stream, to create a stream of perpetual, that's a hard one to say, isn't it? Perpetual presiding good in your mind and in your life. All your negative thoughts can be destroyed, because when truth appears, every form of negativity must disappear. There's no room for two thoughts like that. Step 5 is simple. Let God bring the victory. There are just some things that happen in us, through us, but beyond us. And we have to believe in that. We have to believe that we can't do everything. This battle is not for you to fight. Take your position, stand still, see the victory. Let go and let God. Now maybe you've used the power of truth, spiritual truth, to turn something around in your life. Maybe you were sitting by the phone. I was going to say, I had in here waiting for it to ring, but we don't do that anymore, do we? We don't have a phone that rings that we pick up. Anyway, maybe you're sitting by the phone waiting for the results from some very important medical test that you've had, and they said, oh, we'll get the results to you in a couple of days. And while you're doing that, you fast from fear about it. You know the spiritual truth, that the spirit within you is life and health and joy, that God's healing power is not restricted or limited in any way, and that it works for you. I always think, oh, it works for others, but not for me. No, it works for you. And then you command your thoughts to march, the army of thoughts to march for a positive outcome. And you give thanks that your body is healthy and whole, that your life is good. And then you get the phone call, and the results are what you hope for, what you declared for your life. King Jehoshaphat's message is, do not let fear disable you or depress you. I think you set your faith to work. You bring life and power to your prayers. And then knowing the spiritual truth will carry you, will take you to that watchtower. That's the next slide. Knowing the spiritual truth about any situation will carry you above threatening conditions. It's like insurance. You're kind of shored up against bad things happening, and if they do, you've got coverage, right? Knowing the spiritual truth about any situation will carry you above threatening conditions to where the power of the universal Christ consciousness takes over. Knowing the spiritual truth causes, I think I've got it here, when the power of the universal Christ consciousness takes over, it releases a swift and powerful action that sets in motion spiritual forces that bring miraculous results. And that's what you're doing with this formula. Fasting from fear, knowing the truth, declaring it, giving thanks, and then standing, mind, body, and soul, in the realization that all life is yours, all good is yours. We're told in verse 30, the reign of the king Jehoshaphat was quiet, for God gave him rest and peace all around. After they took all the treasure and the booty back to Jerusalem, 25 more years the king had peace. Peace, because he trained his mind how to meet the difficult experiences of his life. Your treasure is the peace of mind and the affirmative results that you continually live as you live in these truth principles, in the fearlessness that Jehoshaphat demonstrated. The last slide, all of our steps are there for us in our last slide. Fast from fear, know the truth, the spiritual truth. My body is perfect life in God. My finances are all provision and supply. My relationships are harmonious and good. All of that, you declare it. Then you listen with total engagement, mind, body, and soul. And then you commit to, I have it here, you command your thoughts to march in a stream of perpetual presiding good. And then you stand still and see the Spirit of God overwhelmingly, joyously produce results in your life. So I have an affirmation for us to speak as we close. It's a little bit longer than the ones we usually speak, but think about if there's something in your life that you're facing, big or small, just call it into your heart right now, and let's speak this word together. I will not fear. The battle is not mine, but God's. It's not for me to fight. I take my position in faith, stand still, and see the victory of spirit that is right now bringing into my life. And so it is. Let's take that into prayer now as we have a time of meditation and prayer. So take a deep breath in and center yourself in your heart. As you breathe in, let your attention drop from that 18-inch drop from your center forehead where your brain is, and let it drop down into your heart. And there you want to hold anything that, you want to view anything that is troubling you, may be troubling you. Or you want to view anything that you're creating, something wonderful. You see the light of spirit shine into your heart, shine into that circumstance, that condition. You breathe a couple of deep breaths to take in the peace of Christ. The peace of Christ. Knowing full well that as you rest in this place, this point of light, that you are opening an opportunity for Spirit to move in and through you in more powerful and profound ways than ever before. Do not fear or be dismayed at this great multitude, for the battle is not yours, but God's. This battle is not for you to fight. Take your position, stand still, and see and feel the victory of the Lord on your behalf. Let that universal God essence be a stream of goodness in your life. And step into that stream. Your life is good. Your health is radiant, vital and strong. The economies of your life are prospered. Everything you're moving toward, striving toward, is coming together in miraculous ways, easy ways. So you rest with the conviction that all good is coming to you, moving through you. all the little details, all the big things. It says in Philippians, the Spirit of God knows your needs and is even now, right now, fulfilling them according to the riches and glory in Christ Jesus. And so as you rest in that light in your heart, just feel for a few moments perfect outcomes, right solutions, joyous, miraculous conditions. God is with me and within me as all good. God is with me and within me as all good. Let's affirm it. God is with me and within me as all good. And that word all good means all goodness. Every right outcome for your life. And then we let our attention turn to our loved ones, those who have asked for prayer from this ministry, the names in our prayer chest, the viewers watching online. We affirm prayers of life and health for Jim and Priscilla, for Sally, for Laura on vacation watching online. Lots of viewers. Give thanks for you. If there's anyone you especially wish to bless with this idea of fearlessness, standing steadfast and declaring the truth for their lives, you can do that now in this time of prayer. God is with you and within you as all good. For our loved ones, God is with you and within you as all good. Together, God is with you and within you as all good. We continue in our prayers for our election intention, prayers for our nation, our world. We affirm that the divine intelligence of Spirit governs the destiny of the United States of America. And we bless each place where there's conflict with peace. We lift up Ukraine and Russia, Israel, Palestine, Iran. And our familiar affirmation, the forgiving love of Jesus Christ sets all nations free to fulfill their destiny in peace. We know that divine guidance is enlightening the minds of the people who are in leadership. That what we feel right now in this sanctuary of peace in our hearts is radiating out and connecting with them. The forgiving love of Jesus Christ sets all nations free to fulfill their destiny in peace. close affirming, before they call, I will answer. While they are yet speaking, I will hear. And in that confirmation of faith in spirit, we give thanks now. In the name and the nature of the living Christ. And together we all say, amen.